And good morning, Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. It's Thursday. It's May the 18th. How are you this morning? It is beautiful here in Eastern North Carolina, and it's a little cool here as well. And I hear up in the north, it's pretty cool up there too. So I'm so glad to be with you here. Yet another great day here at Common Sense America. If you have yet not subscribed to any of my channels, hop right over to YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Rumble. I also am posting a lot of my new interviews at EdenGordonMedia.com. You can find out a lot about me right there. My previous work for a great president, my previous work for great conservative Americans, my work as a veteran spouse, my run for Congress. Oh, I wish I'd run for Congress. So many people want me to run for Congress. I run for State House, General Assembly here in the great state of North Carolina. And people are wanting me to run for that seat yet again because nothing's happening. But that's just a sidebar note. You guys, we have had such a phenomenal week here at Common Sense America. Great guests like Stanley Ridgely, Ramona Bessinger, fighting for our education, fighting for our freedoms. I can't tell you enough how important it is to hop over and check out some of their interviews. I've been posting their reels on Instagram, on Facebook, and the reels are very popular on my social pages. So thank you to those who are checking those out, reviewing them, sharing them. Ramona, thank you for sharing your interviews and sharing my show. You are a woman of influence. You are a whistleblower, and I'm so proud of what you have done. So as I'm speaking to you, the audience, whether you check this out later or whether you check it out this morning or if you hop on later in the show, I'm in awe of God's goodness to the show. I'm in awe of God's greatness to opening up doors that I would have never imagined or dreamed of. So in the coming months, there will be more great announcements coming your way. I'm excited to share with you the things that have been placed on our journey here at Common Sense America, both personal and professional. And I'm so grateful for your support. You all send private messages to me. Many of you don't send comments in the public spectrum, but that's okay. You're welcome to. But I appreciate the private messages of support, encouragement, checking in, and following me on this journey we call life. It's not about the destination necessarily. It's about the journey and how we approach the journey, how we go by faith in the journey. What does that journey look like? And how we walk by faith on that journey. So I'm grateful to each and every one of you. I was looking on Twitter this morning, and a lot of you don't bother with Twitter. I know Elon Musk has put some people in place to run it. I still see a lot of censorship, to be honest with you. And I'm not just speaking out of turn. I see it, and I know, and I hear it from other people. But I went on there this morning to see if there was anything common sense related to Twitter this morning. Not really, except for my show when I hashtag common sense. And this morning I was also looking at the New York Post. Hey, I'm a New York Post girl. I got to find truth somewhere. And it's on the radio airwaves on AM channels and New York Post and a couple other local papers in and around the nation, but not from your lamestream media by any means. And I just have to share this story before we bring over our new guest to the show, book authors, Army chap, a Pulitzer Prize nominated bestselling author. I'm in awe of all the amazing guests that God has brought to the show. But let me say something before I bring these fabulous gentlemen over to the show. I was looking at the New York Post this morning, looking for common sense commentary. And you guys know how I fight for the young minds of tomorrow. And I fight for the culture, and I fight these culture wars by faith and by speaking truth. So the front page of the NewYorkPost.com is highlighting a gentleman who's of color in a swimsuit labeled under, quote, woman's Adidas website. It says, make it sense, make it make sense. Adidas Pride 2023 women's swimsuits to appear by modeling by a man. And it's sparking a lot of backlash, and it rightly should. The image is on the front of the New York Post. I'm not going to share it here. This is a family show, but I'm saying it to our kitchen table discussions that we have here. We are here about God, country, and family, and our kitchen table discussions have the greater impact than any mainstream media, any newspaper, any online source, any presidential speech, whether it's the current person in office or whether it's my former boss. But at the end of the day, our kitchen table discussions are going to impact the young minds of tomorrow. And this is not common sense, ladies and gentlemen. It's pure evil. That's what it is. So this morning, I have the honor to bring over to the show an Army chap. My husband was Army, so this is important to me. Being a veteran spouse, living here in Eastern North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, New River Air Station, Cherry Point, F-35 house, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, and Fort Bragg. We got them all. Coast Guard at Camp Lejeune as well. So I'm honored to bring over to the show a book author, a chaplain, who's been serving our nation in so many different aspects. He's also a Frontline TV host. And the books that they have put out are The Military Guide to Disarming Deception, The Military Guide to Armageddon. So please welcome to the show. Hello, sir. Good morning. Nice to meet you, Colonel.
It's great to be on your show this morning.
Oh, what an honor to meet you. Thank you for your service on Military Appreciation Month here in the month of May. Thank you so much for what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my pleasure to do it. 32 years, and it felt like it was a short stint, but you know what? It was well worth all the sacrifice.
Oh, well, I've been following you. I'm stalking you on a lot of different pages. And as a veteran spouse, I first want to ask you a couple questions before we jump into your books. I want to ask you, as a chaplain for all of those years serving overseas, I have no doubt that you probably were in the same areas of my husband was in Iraq, and he talks fondly of his chaps. And I'm so grateful to their influence on his faith journey while he was over in Iraq. But I want to hear your thoughts on what is happening in our nation's backyard, in our kitchen table conversations that is affecting our veterans. I look around, we're in a huge veteran community, and I look and see all the things that are happening to our precious veterans around this nation, being kicked out of hotels for migrants' sake. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on what can we do as the American people to bring them to, do we bring them to North Carolina, here in North Carolina? Do we bring them to another state to make sure that they're taken care of? Because they are the ones that are going to continue to fight for this country, even when we don't realize it. What can we do in this situation? And obviously it points to both of your books, the deception that's happening in our culture, what is happening, preparing for Armageddon, if you will. What are your thoughts initially on what we are seeing happen to our veterans, especially in upstate in New York and around the nation?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. It's a good question, and I tip my hat to all our vets who are listening or viewing this, and people who are interested in supporting our military. People don't realize that when you go to war and you leave Iraq or Afghanistan or a combat situation, that war continues on in you. It doesn't leave.
Exactly.
And so I got many friends who are taking care of vets. General Bob Dees is on our board. Has the National Center for Healthy Veterans up in Virginia.
Okay.
I'd recommend people go to that website. And he is taking care of vets there at a 300-acre ranch in Virginia.
Okay.
And a great place to get healthy again. People, you have to understand that an average of 7 vets every day commit suicide.
Yes.
And it's because of the stresses that they encountered, post-traumatic stress disorder, self-medication, alcohol, drugs, and all that. And they come back and they can't cope with life here for a variety of reasons. And
Mhm.
so we have a lot of homeless vets. We have,
Yeah.
vets on the street. We got problematic vets, emotional. And I know the Veterans Administration, God bless them. They do what they can do, but it really takes everybody working together to
Mhm.
help our veterans. So there are a lot of things you can do. You can get educated about it.
Mhm.
If you're a pastor or you're in a church, you
Mhm.
can welcome those vets, especially if you live in an area like you do and I do. I live near Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, here
Okay.
in the Columbus, Georgia area. So there are lots of things we can do, but what's going on in the country? Oh, that's a whole nother story. Uh, uh,
Yes.
we're
Yes.
going downhill very quickly, and I know a lot of people hear this all the time, but our moral foundations have crumbled. They're not crumbling; they have crumbled. We're in a nosedive. We're in a crisis situation in our country, and bad things are happening as we outline in our books. And we have a third book coming out next year.
Yes.
So, we can discuss that, but that's
Yes.
my opening salvo to you.
Yes. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I was looking at what you and Troy have done with these books, and I had a lot of people instantly interested in the photo I put forth to promote this show for today because of the military audience that I have, the retiree audience that I have. Talk to me about what was that point where you and Troy came together to start writing these books. And I noticed that the original, the Armageddon one was what, 2021, and then we have the Military Guide to Disarming Deception was 2022. How did this come together for you to start writing these books, and then you have the new one coming out next year?
Right. Well, in 2018, I was getting set to retire, and that was the year that I was transitioning out of the military and into the civilian world after 32 years, as I said. And I really started writing another book called The Making of a Warrior because
Mhm.
I was the president and CEO of Warrior Refuge, and basically an organization to help veterans. And there is that time I really started writing, but I sensed in my spirit that the direction of that book wasn't the right direction. And the Lord helped me, to navigate to what He said was interesting to me. In my heart, said, I want you to prepare the church and warn the world what is about to happen. This was 2018. The book came out on January the 6th. And,
Oh.
right after Insurrection Day, and we were on the first program we were on was Newsmax nationwide.
Mhm.
And the gentleman interviewing us says, did you guys plan this book to come out at this time?
Yeah.
Um,
I saw that interview. Very
yeah,
good question.
no, it was all in God's timing, and Troy
Yes.
was with me at the time, but, Troy and I got together. He was on my LinkedIn page. I have, like, 7,000, followers on LinkedIn at that time, and, his name just, popped on my screen one morning, while I was in my office on active duty, and, I contacted him, and, Troy is a super smart, a Pulitzer Prize nominated, investigative journalist,
Yes.
and, the rest is history. He has lots and lots of people and contacts over the many years, and on my side, I did too. So we put our brains together, and the book, and both of them are national bestsellers, and it's because people are vitally interested in how to prepare what's happening.
Yeah.
After that was COVID, and after that was this, and things are coming our way, and
Yes.
digital currency, as you all know, and
Yes.
all these things are conspiring for a new world order, new world
Yes.
government, and we
Yes.
needed to prepare the people for that.
Yes. Talk to me about the Armageddon one. That I was listening to some of your interviews. You were talking about Ukraine. You were talking about Russia and world order, if you will, like you just mentioned. And my gravest concern for this nation is I was taking my walk this morning and I see the American flag flying proudly, and it was an instant moment when the Lord's always speaking to me and the Holy Spirit's really guiding me. And I thought to myself, how much longer is this flag going to be able to be raised and flying freely? And I thought, and I know that's not far off from what is about to happen. can you talk to me about the Armageddon book? But can you talk to me from the standpoint of our defense? Because we have such a defense that is weakened because of what the current administration is pushing. And then can you talk to me about what you see happening in the next couple years that you feel like God is really speaking to you through this book and what's to come?
Well, it's a great question. I had an interview with Eric McTaxis on our show,
Yes.
Frontline,
Yes.
and
Good
we were
man.
talking about his new book, The Letter to the American Church. I really think because in our book, the Armageddon book, we really outline many chapters and where we are and where we're going and why all this is happening. Um, where is America? America is faltering. We're like really, that's why I brought up Eric Metaxas. I think that we're really like the world of 1930s Nazi in Germany, where the Germans, have been suffering for a long time under a lot of different regimes. The Versailles Treaty, and
Right.
where they were poor, and then Hitler comes and offers them all these great things, and they take the bait. And the church in America is really, I think, the fault here in right now. What's going on? Pastors have not stood up for the truth. They've let all this wokeism come into their
Yes.
pulpits and their churches. We are faltering at every level right now, but we still serve a God that is able to turn things around. If
Yes.
the church back in Nazi Germany, 1930s, stood their ground, I believe we'd have a whole different ball game today than we did. But as it may, can we learn from history? Is it too late? Everybody's asking me that question. Is it too late? It's not too late,
Hmm.
but we've got to stand our ground in so many ways. And
Hmm.
so the first thing I would tell people is get back into the Word of God, get
Yes.
back into moral foundations, get back into the strength and the power of the American culture that we once knew. And every turn we must fight them. Whether it's genderism, wokeism, the digital
Yes.
currency. I heard someone the other day, and I have to agree with them. Look, if you don't want digital currency to coming, use cash, fight for cash. Cash is key. So
Yeah.
on and on it goes. We could spend many hours talking about it, but the question that you really, I think, want to hear is, what is going on in the future? What's happening? Well,
Hmm.
what is happening is people have plans for us. Billionaires at the World Economic Forum,
Yes.
people around the world have been planning a long time, thousands of years really, for globalism, new world order, ever since back in the days of Genesis, where man started building a city on the plains of Shinar in the Canaanite land.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this is nothing new, but really, the new world order is they want to control your money, they want to control your life, they want to control your property. They have an agenda for you, and I got to tell you, it's not a good agenda.
No, I've heard rumors, and we always gonna. It says biblically we're gonna hear rumors of wars, things of that nature, and something that was brought to my attention privately yesterday. But this part I can say specifically: the conversations of concentration camps that I have heard rumors of since COVID, since that time period. And my question to you is that a factor within what's going to happen within as you talk about the Armageddon piece?
Well, there are concentration camps on our planet as we speak.
Hmm.
If you go to North Korea, you go to China, people who are not cooperating, that's where they find themselves, like the gulags of Russia of yesteryear.
Hmm.
And so if you can't control people, that's where people go.
Right.
The Nazis did that in Nazi Germany. There's some countries are doing it today. But the real concentration camp is, I don't really know if it's still any longer required. If they can control your money, let's say, like in China, for example,
Right.
good credit scores. If they can say, hey, we don't like the way you're spending your money. If you don't change, we're shutting off your finances. If you don't do what we tell you to do, you're not going to have a high credit score. You can't travel. You can't buy things.
Mhm.
By the way, that's coming and already is in many ways here. I saw the executive order signed by Joe Biden that in 5 years, we will go into complete digital currency in this country. And it's coming quickly. Every day, we're hearing stories about Fed now and all the things that are happening to
Mhm.
get us over to a new world order. They want to control. And by the way, the COVID was just the beginning warm up for
Right.
viruses in the world.
Right.
What the millionaires, billionaires have discovered is if you throw a virus out there, you get people scared, you can control them. Bill
Right.
Gates, in one of my shows, I don't know if you saw that, but we were talking about Bill Gates 2025. He's predicting a new virus that he named that said it's going to hit the world.
Of
So,
course.
they have lots of plans for us in the future. We've got to stand up now before it's too late.
Well, let me ask you this. How do we protect our families? How do we protect my parents are retirement age? How do we protect them from this next virus? I mean, the power of prayer, we've got that. God always wins. We've got that. But day to day, how do we protect the young minds of tomorrow? And how do we protect those who are retirement age, the Vietnam veteran age? How do we protect them as this is all happening around us?
Well, the honest answer is there is no protection. In a sense that can you isolate? The thing is right now is preparation.
Hmm.
If you want to protect, if you have to think about it in terms of preparation. That's what we dive into. But for I don't want to sound total alarmist here, but
Yeah.
protection is a word that in the military means a lot of different things. But you're going to war, bullets will be flying at you.
Yes.
That's just part of the war. That's we're gonna so to get really battle ready, as we talk about all the time. And by the way, we're gonna be at the NRB next week
Mhm.
and we have a huge number of guests going to be talking about this very thing for 3 solid days in Orlando next week. But
Mhm.
first, how do you get battle ready? Number one, make sure your soul and your relationship to God is correct.
Yes.
We talked about prayer
Yes.
and Bible reading. We talk
Yes.
about that all the time, but not just Bible reading and prayer, but it doesn't do you any good to read the Bible and not put it into practice in your life. So
Exactly.
you got to go to the next step. If you really want to be prepared spiritually, you got to read the Bible. And not only that, you got to do the Bible. And
Mhm.
so what it's telling you to do, and of course, if you have a great pastor, they can help you. But a lot of pastors have gone woke, so that can
Yes,
be
they have.
problematic. So you got the spiritual. What about the physical
Yes.
preparation? And that's what you're alluding to. What can we do? Number one is make sure that you're well stocked up now. And I live in the country and I have acres out here. We have, vegetation. We have gardens. We've got water. We've got fish. We got all kinds of stuff. But if you're in a city, what do you
Yes.
do? I would say make sure you've got a good supply of food that lasts for years, canned
Mhm.
stuff that is on the market today. It can last 20, 25 years. We have some of that out here too.
Mhm.
So make sure you're stocked up physically, medically. Yeah, if you're retirement age or, if you have medical problems, make sure you got lots of medicines on hand as much as you can stock up, medical kits and things like that.
Right.
Clean drinking water or a way to filter water. Those are the kind of small preparation things you can do right now. And if nothing ever did happen, you're going to have that in case you got into a tornado or hurricane or natural
Right.
disaster, which is hitting us
Exactly.
all over the world right now anyway.
Exactly. Do you think Americans are complacent?
I think most people are. I mean, even in war, we have a chapter in our book on disorder,
Uh-huh.
disarming the disarming, but the military guide to disarming deception. Excuse me. Um, and we have a whole chapter on complacency. You can get complacent anywhere.
Mhm.
In the army, war is interesting because there's lots of boredom, lots of things to let your
Yep.
guard down. Nothing is happening, and all of a
Yep.
sudden, in 5 minutes, your whole world is changing. Well,
Yes.
that's complacency in America. We get complacent when we accept things. There's a story about churches having worship. As the Jews were going by in the trains, the people would sing louder, not to hear the screams of the Jews as they, came by the church.
Mhm.
That that's the ultimate of complacency. We
Mhm.
can't, we have abortion. We can't plug our ears to the moral cries of what's going on in our country. We
Mhm.
must get active, get involved in politics, get involved in voting, get involved in your community. Because if you don't get involved, then other people are going to tell you what to do, and you may not like it.
Well, that talks to the whole political spectrum as it is. And I share with my audience, and my audience knows me because this podcast was born out of my loss for state house. But that state house election was bought by the other candidate,
Sure.
literally bought. And so, a lot of people say, well, why would you want to run again? Why do you want to put yourself through that? Because I love this country. I love that flag and I love my heavenly father. And I know if he's calling me to do something, I need to do it. But I think a lot of people go into the other mindset of, why is it worth the time? Why is it worth the money? Because corruption's going to win anyway. That's not what God put you and me on this earth to voice. We need to voice the truth of his word, but we also need to voice the truth of actually what is actually happening in and around this nation, to fight for that, to fight for the young lives, to fight for the veterans, to fight for our military and families. So
No,
what
yeah.
go
No,
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying that's exactly right. If you're not willing to fight, then you have to accept whatever's coming your way. And if you're willing to do that, so be it. But I'm not willing to do it. You're not willing to do it. A lot of our viewers are not willing to do that. Even and pastors, we have a lot of people. There's a groundswell. This Bud Light thing that just happened
Yes. Yes.
is a perfect example. Or Tucker Carlson just yesterday, he's on Twitter with 110 million viewers. You don't have to stop. And if we stop, then they win, and we're not going to let them win.
Exactly. Well, it goes to that article I just read from the New York Post this morning, how Adidas is doing this whole transgender movement for their new swimwear. And, that's the thing. We have got to fight this activity that is happening. I've had so many people come on the show to talk about education, to talk about what is happening in our universities, what is happening in our school systems. How do we protect the young minds of tomorrow? How do we protect them? How do we not let this cult agenda take over their minds as they are attending university, thinking they're going to come out with, boom, six-figure, income. And also, oh, by the way, I hate the world mentality.
Well, we have a whole chapter on our Disarming Deception book on education, and we've had a lot of guests talking about this. And let me just say a couple things. Number one,
Please.
don't send your kids to woke universities, okay? Don't support them. Just this week, I read an article. There was a doctor that was supporting a woke university at the tune of $50,000 a year donation. And then when he found out what they were really teaching, he said, no more. I'm going to give my money to universities and schools that deserve it. So we need to dry up. We want to continue with, if you want to go woke, go broke.
Right, exactly.
So our money really counts in this agenda, in capitalism, especially in the
Yes.
United States of America. If you don't like something, why send your kids? We have a lot of church parents that are out there. Their kids are going to church all their lives, and they send them to woke university, and they completely reject their church, Christianity, and everything else because they got indoctrinated. Why
Yes.
did you send your kids there in the first place? A
Yes.
lot of us say we want a good education. Well, guess what? That's not a good education
Mhm.
if they're being brain indoctrinated with wokeism and everything, liberalism and progressivism.
Yes.
And so we have to fight that at every turn. There are good schools out there. There are Christian schools. There are private schools. There are places that are not doing this kind of stuff. We need to find those and fund them and forget the rest of them.
Amen. Amen. I always cite this quote from a candidate for United States Senate from the great state of Virginia. And he said to me as he was going around the state talking to his future constituents, I said, what do you hear from your constituents? Are they upset? Are they discouraged? Are they giving up? And he said, we the people, we are still the majority. And he said, we have got to sound the alarm that we are still the majority. Do not let this woke indoctrination, this cult-like mentality take over your homes, your families, your education. So I couldn't set it better enough. And I keep sounding that alarm to everybody who joins the show, because I don't want us, the American people, to give up. I always say this, the kitchen table discussions here in our homes are the most powerful. Not Biden's conversations, not his speeches. No, it is in our homes, but we have to make that a point to gather around the table in our homes and not around our phones. I think that's also a big issue right there. Let me ask you this. As you are headed into NRB next week, I've been having so many NRB guests on this show. I've been honored to have them come join the show. Talk to me about what you'll be doing. Are you going to be doing your Frontline TV show? What will you and Troy be doing?
Yeah, we have lined up about 30 guests so far and more counting for next week. We're starting out with Abby Johnson, who is, as you know, pro-life, and
Yes.
that'll be even on Monday before it even kicks off. We'll be there. And so we have our frontline broadcast set up right at the huge entrance to registration and exhibit. So right next to us is Pathway to Victory with Robert Jeffress and Salem Media, and all these great people are going to be lined up where we're going to be there, and we're going to be broadcasting there and the show. And so we have huge guests. I mean, we have the CEO of PureFlex going to be with us.
Yes.
We have Robert Jeffress is going to be with us. We have some of the actors from Chosen going to be with us, and
Fabulous. Wonderful.
directors, producers, actors, people who are in the media, leaders. We have people coming in from Iran, who is one of the presidents of Dr. Shakir, who is the president of Iran Ministries. He's going to be talking about what's going on in the Middle East. So we're real excited about all the things that we're going to be talking about, and they'll be going on around the country, and
That's fabulous.
yeah, we're excited about it.
No, I was excited to hear about PureFlix merging with Great American Media. And I sat there in the back of my mind thinking, this is going to happen soon enough. And then sure enough, it was announced. So I was really excited to hear about that. I'm a huge fan of what Great American Media has done since the Hallmark, breakup and everything. And I'm proud of how they are standing up to the culture wars, which is fabulous. On a final note, talk to us about the new book coming out next year. And talk to us about also where we can watch everything on Frontline TV, where we can watch you.
Right. We're working on, in fact, we just turned the manuscript in this week to Chosen, Baker Publishing Group, and they're a great bunch of people. And so the new book is all about your purpose. We have a working title. Basically, it's about the first book was Armageddon. The second book was Deception. The third is, what is your purpose here on earth, and what should you be doing? And many of the things we're talking about today, it's going to be in the book.
Yeah.
What is my purpose? What is my assignment? What is God calling me to do? You know, some people say, well, I'm going to retire and do nothing. You may do that, and your body's going to say it's time to shut down, and you're going to go bye-bye, or you can get in the fight. And, and find out, what is your assignment? What gifts has God given you? So it's the title of the book working title is Your Mission in God's Army. And what's your mission? What has God called you to do? Yes. And we have one chapter that talks about, there's no difference between the secular and the sacred. A lot of people say, well, I don't want to work in the church, or I don't want to be a pastor. That's fine. What does God have for you? What has He given to you to do? What are your talents and your desires and your passions? So we develop all that in the book.
As you were describing that, I couldn't help but think about my husband, who's been retired. He's been out for many years. As long as he was in, he's been retired that long, much longer. And we had a phone conversation with a family friend last night, and she was sharing with us. She was like, Craig, you have so much to offer. He's a mentor to a lot of teenagers. But in that, when I think about our veterans who have come home and tried to figure out what their next identity is, you can't just shut it off. And this book seems like a perfect gift to the veteran community, the new ones who have just gotten out and those who have been veterans for a while. It's like you said, if you're not active, things start to shut down in many senses. So I see this new book coming out next year is a huge gift to the veteran community. And I can't help but wonder if that was one of the audiences you had in mind as you were writing it.
Oh, absolutely. And every one of our chapters in all of our books really starts out with a true either training or war story that I've been involved with myself. And 32 years, our publisher asked, "Are you ever going to run out of stories?" I said, "No, I did. I have 32 years worth of stories. I worked in the Pentagon for 4 years. I was in combat in 4 different locations. I've been around the world, and God took me to the highest levels of the Army. I was the installation management command chaplain over all 75 installations of the Army for all religious support. So I have a lot of stories."
Yeah.
And so those stories are a gift that God has given me to give to people who are veterans. So yes, some of our primary audience are veterans. We target our Christians, churchgoers, pastors, anybody who is aspiring to follow Christ in these end times. That's who we're looking at.
Oh, I can't wait to pick it up. And I have a lot of book authors come to this show, and I am looking forward to sharing your book with my audience. And if Blythe is so willing to share a couple guest extra copies, I'd love to give them out as gifts to our show audience, because we have such a huge audience of military and retirees, and I know it would be a precious book in their hands. So I'm grateful to you, Colonel. Thank you. As my husband always says, thank you, chaps, for all that you guys do. I'm grateful. And I look forward to, meeting you and Troy in person and working with you in the future. There's so many great opportunities out there to collaborate. So for such a time as this, let's get to work. We got a lot to do.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show. You can get me. Our books are anywhere books are sold. A lot of people go to Amazon. You can go to, if you want to watch Frontline, that's on YouTube. Just type in Battle Ready Ministries or Frontline in Battle Ready Ministries. You can subscribe to our channel, or you can go to our website, www.battle-ready.org. That's battle-ready.org. And I also have an author site, davidjgiammona.com. So there's lots of ways to get a hold of Troy and I.
No, that's fabulous. And it looks like your partner in crime just popped on. Let me bring him over to the show and we can do a group. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Very good to meet you.
Well, Colonel, do you want to stay or do you have to go?
I'm going to pop off now, but I'm going to let Troy take over.
All right. Sounds good. Go Army, beat Navy.
God bless.
God bless you. Bye-bye. Good morning, Troy. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm great. How are you doing today?
Good, good. I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Are you able to get a little closer to your microphone?
Yeah, let's see here. How does that sound? Is that better?
Oh, that's much better. Thank you so much. Thank you. I had a wonderful conversation with Colonel, and it was just great to meet him. And I am just so blown away by what you have both been doing as you came together to do these books. And we had such a phenomenal conversation. But I wanted to see if I could ask you a couple other questions separate from these books. I noticed that you wrote the book, Trump Apocalypse. I'm like, let me get that word out there. I had served in the Trump administration, and I would love to hear. I did not have a chance to read it, but I was looking at the reviews and things like that. I would love to hear what really spearheaded you writing this book and the reviews and what came from writing this book.
Yeah, so that was written with my other co-author, Paul McGuire. We have a nationally syndicated radio show, the Paul McGuire Show. We teamed up in 2015 for a book called The Babylon Code, Solving the Bible's Greatest End Times Mystery, the #1 bestseller. And in that book, we featured an interview of Billy Graham, who said that America essentially needed to have a national day of repentance at the end of that book. It sort of explored Bible prophecy and current events and this great biblical mystery of Mystery Babylon, Revelation 17:18. And then as a sort of investigative expose of globalism. And so somebody was kind enough to deliver a box of the Babylon Codes to President Trump while he was running for president. 2 months later, he announced that Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo as his campaign platform. Now, we have no idea if it has any connection to our book, but it was very interesting. And so when he got elected, we were blown away. And so our agent asked us, would you guys like to write a book about, the prophetic significance of President Trump's election?
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, why we call it Trumpocalypse? And so we thought, oh, that's a great name, And so we wrote this book called Trumpocalypse, and sort of explored where are we in this the prophetic scheme of things, and Bible prophecy. How does President Trump fit into what's happening? Is God using him as a politician in some way to advance the kingdom of God and that kind of thing? So it's sort of a whole book exploring how does he fit into the prophetic timeline, and what's happening today, and what's going on behind the scenes with in the world, the deep state and secret societies and things like that.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. What are your thoughts now as we head into 2024? I obviously have not read your book. So did you talk to what would be ahead if he did have a second term? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, well, I've talked to Paul McGuire about this, and what we think is that, God is obviously working a much bigger plan than we understand. And so,
Exactly.
people were, very surprised that, President Trump didn't get, reelected last term. But perhaps, now the polls are saying that he may very well beat, Biden in this election. And so, God has his timing and his purposes. So I think it's quite possible that President Trump will now serve a second term, and we can see a big turnaround in this country. So I think it's a very, very hopeful time for America.
Yes, most definitely. Because after the conversations that the Colonel and I talked about, just with your books on talking about Armageddon and the deception and things of that nature, and how we need to be physically prepared. We talked about the physical preparation. We talked about the spiritual preparation. And he talked about how you two came together to write these books, and with your new one coming out early next year. But I want to hear some of your background. He shared with me how you guys came together, but I would love to hear your story on how you two met, how you came together, and what really inspired you, being that investigative journalist, to write these books. What was really the conviction, the voices of truth really wanting to come out for you in these books?
Well, I mean, my entire career, I've been a journalist for 3 decades, is dedicated to trying to bring to light the real truth of what's really happening. I was a reporter at the LA Daily News for many years, other newspapers. And so after Trumpocalypse came out, the Colonel got a hold of me out of the blue, I think like 3 months after Trumpocalypse came out, early 2018. And when he first called me, he said he was trying to write a book called The Making of a Warrior. And the first thought I had was, because we had so much, pushback on this message, because we're talking about secret society, we're talking about the deep state, all these sort of controversial topics in these books, and people are like, Bible prophecy, secret society, what are you talking about,
Right.
And so when the Colonel got a hold of me, I just sort of thought, I knew about these polls that show, what's it like 70-80% Americans highly respect the military. And so I just thought to myself, maybe it's the Holy Spirit prompting, I just thought, if America and the world is going to listen to anybody about the dangers we're facing, they'll listen to a retired U.S. Army chaplain and colonel. And
Right.
so I agreed to help him, write and edit these books and get them published. And it just took off. The Military Guide to Armageddon became a #1 bestseller, and this new book, The Military Guide to Disarming Deception, is #1 bestseller. And so we've had this phenomenal, acceptance and reaction. And so, and now, of course, we're several years into this, and
Yes.
like a recent Lifeway poll said, 9 in 10 pastors now see signs of the end times and current events. And so I'm just very encouraged that people are waking up, people are getting involved, they're getting ready. And so it's very encouraging to see this across America now.
Yeah, no, it is very encouraging, because that's exactly what we had talked about briefly. I was sharing with him that we, the people, we are still the majority in this love for this nation, one nation under God, and this nation being about God, our country, and our families. And, I shared with him before you came on, this show was born out of the kitchen table discussions that happen around our home. And whether, getting rid of the phones for a hot second and really engaging with one another, I said they're more important than any presidential speech. They're more important than anything. They are the fabric of our society, what changes our society, and what really shapes the hearts and minds of the young minds for tomorrow. And so let me ask you this, as you have been a journalist for 3 decades, and I in my previous life, I just joke about that, but I was at Fox Business. I was at the Fox Business desk producing, and for many years, 20 years, I was on Capitol Hill communications for members of Congress, working with all members of the media, and so many things have changed in the time period of Trump's administration, in the time period of COVID. And the media fabric has just really changed. And you being a part of that for so long, what are your thoughts now and today? Because I've been censored on this show. And it seems as though, and I do call it this, and this isn't a disrespect to you, but I've heard many people say it in the lamestream media. I mean, that's in many senses that's what we're seeing now. What are your thoughts on the current culture and the climate of today's media reporting versus what you have stood for so long?
Yeah, so I mean, for pretty much most of the history, the media's been very liberal. Most of the editors are quite liberal. But what's changed, like in the last, 5-10 years or so, is this, because when you work in a media organization, there's sort of these unwritten rules of what you can and can't say.
Yeah.
And so when I started to delve into these controversial topics, I got pushback from different editors and that kind of thing. And so I think what's happened now is you still have good journalists, good reporters, that kind of thing in the media, but there's this top-down sort of control system.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't go along with the program, you sort of recognize you're going to be out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't subscribe to the agenda they're pushing, and I believe there's been a gigantic shift in the media now where however it's done, whether it's done through the deep state, through intelligence agencies, through secret societies, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly, but there's definitely an agenda, and so you can only say certain things. You're supposed to say things a certain kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple hot button issues that have to do with the election and the pandemic and things like that. So there's we're essentially watching our media being transformed into something you'd see like in a communist or a socialistic kind of country, and very controlled and manipulated. And so there's a lot of deception and disinformation that's being released to the public today.
What do you think you as a journalist now, what do you think myself as a podcaster, radio host, what do you think we need to continue to do to protect ourselves from the censorship? Is it what we're doing now? Is it, with you guys being hosts of Frontline TV? What are your thoughts on that? How do we navigate those very murky waters?
Well, our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, they all recognized that freedom of the press is one of the most important things to have a good, functioning democracy. And so what we're seeing now, we have this whole universe of conservative media, Christian media, shows like yours, shows like ours, that are telling people the truth. And so that's, very important for people to understand the truth, because, Jesus said the truth will set you free.
Amen.
And so as more and more people awaken to what's really happening, they see through all the lies and deception, that's when you start to see things change. And so we're beginning to see that now. Much of the country is finally awakening to, that we're watching this sort of communist, socialist, progressive, takeover of our country. It's asymmetrical warfare. It probably involves China, Russia, the deep state, other actors around the world who want to take America down. But, we have this amazing experiment in freedom and liberty here. And so we've got to, do everything we can to hold on to this country. If America goes down, the entire world's going to, merge into this one world order, this authoritarian state that the, powerful forces want to bring online.
Yeah. Well, talk to me. Let's talk a little bit about NRB next week. Are you going to also be joining the Colonel next week for NRB?
Yeah, we'll both be at NRB. We're going to do a number of interviews on our Frontline show and do some media interviews and just networking and getting to see many of our friends and co-workers.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the Frontline. Talk to me about Frontline TV a little bit. Talk to me about what you have been doing with Frontline. I just loved seeing some of your interviews, but for my audience, share with them where people can go watch it and talk to me a little bit about some of the top line items that you've been really zeroing in on to fight the culture wars that we're facing right now.
Well, yeah, we've had a great success of bringing some, fairly well-known people on. We had Kevin Sorbo on. He talked about his new film, Left Behind, Rise of the Antichrist.
Yes.
We had Eric Metaxas on talking about his excellent book, Letter to the American Church.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi Jonathan Bernis, Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin,
Yes.
Major General Bob Dees, just like sort of all these, great, heroes of our country. They're, fighting for freedom, pushing back against this agenda. And, we talk about these kind of topics, what's going on in politics, the presidential race, what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on in the military, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, China's threat to, take over Taiwan. Could that lead to some kind of, global war? All these topics are happening today. What's going on the front lines and military space and geopolitics?
Yeah, well, I absolutely love it. And I was sharing with the Colonel right before you hopped over how much I would love to have a couple copies of your books to share with my audience. And I have book authors on here all the time. And the book author piece and the features of bringing the truth and light to my audience and to this nation is so important to me. So I would love to be able to share your book with those. And also the Trump book, I still want to get a copy of that. And I would love to dig into that. I was honored to serve with the pleasure of the president. I was honored to serve in that administration. And I was honored to be able to serve the job that they gave me was communications for our military spouses and employment for our veterans. And so I would love to hear what you have written in that book and read it for myself and be able to share it with my audience. So I would love for both you and the Colonel to eventually come back to the show after NRB, after things have calmed down a little bit, to talk about the new book coming out next year. He had mentioned that highly. And I said to him, with this being such a military veteran community, I said, this new book you two are working on seems like the audience was intended for a veteran, for a retiree on many levels. And so I'm so excited to have that book in hand as well. So I'm grateful to both of you. I'm grateful for your time this morning. And are you on social? Can we follow you on social? Are you on Twitter, Instagram? Where are you located?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just look up Troy Anderson. My website's troyanderson.us.
Okay, fabulous. Well, sir, many blessings to you. Thank you for what you have done. Troy Anderson, Pulitzer Prize nominated investigative journalist and best-selling author. Thank you so much for your time today. Many blessings, sir.
Yeah, thank you. God bless you.
You too. And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. What a phenomenal morning we have had here on this podcast. I am so grateful to Troy Anderson and also Colonel David Giammona. What an amazing two individuals who've written so many books. You guys have got to hop over to Amazon, pick up their books. We're going to get some. Also, if you guys are interested, I'm going to do a couple book giveaways on this show. We're going to be amping that up as well in the coming weeks. But Military Guide to Disarming Deception and Military Guide to Armageddon, two books that they have put together. And then obviously the new one that they have coming out, which will be coming out early next year. So for such a time as this, have a fabulous Thursday. We have a lot coming to you all next week. Many surprises. We're going to keep those under the radar for just a hot second, but many new great interviews coming to you next week. And hey, you guys, send me your comments, and also make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe to Truth at Common Sense America. That's what we're about here. So until then, have a fantastic Thursday, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
It's time for Common Sense America.